All right, my people, let's talk a little philosophy. Today, we're going to take a look at a short that comes to us from Christian content. It features Cliffe Knechtle doing what Cliffe does best, setting up shop on a college campus and throwing down with a bunch of earnest, overzealous 19-year-olds. I can't give you the complete context of the video because I can't find the longer form of it. There is an ocean of Cliffe Knechtle shorts out there, and Christian content seems to be one of many channels that sort of mine longer videos to create these shorts and pump them out into the world. The description from Christian content asks us, why can't atheists answer this simple question? Let's take a look.
If I date rape, are you going to respect my decision to date rape? Why not?
If you date rape someone, I would judge that morally wrong.
Is that arrogant on your part?
No.
Why?
Because I have a set of relativist beliefs that make raping someone wrong in my eyes.
Good. That's your eyes. What about my eyes? What's the basis of you telling me that what I did was wrong?
Because rape...
free will.
So what's wrong with that?
Well, what is wrong with that? You tell me. You've been talking about it quite a bit.
Good. I'll tell you exactly what's wrong with it. To date rape is wrong because it is a violation of the dignity of a human being created in the image of God. But if a human being is a cosmic accident, then there's nothing absolutely wrong with date rape.
So it seems pretty clear that the question Christian content believes an atheist can't answer is, why is date rape wrong? In order to see if that's true, we're going to have to address a whole bunch of other stuff that's going on in this video. It begins with Cliffe asking Backpack Guy if he'll respect his decision to date rape. And this makes sense because we can imagine that Backpack Guy had previously accused Cliffe of arrogance or failing to respect other people's beliefs. When Backpack Guy says no, it's wrong, Cliffe asks why. And here's where we start to get a little bit of philosophical meat. Backpack Guy gives a relativist explanation of how and why he would find date rape to be wrong. Then we have another onlooker, bystander, participant chime in something about free will. Cliffe asks, well, why free will? But ignores it largely and plows on because Backpack Guy jumped back in. Why would you say that date rape is wrong? And Cliffe, like a lion on a wounded gazelle, jumps into action. He says, date rape is wrong because it's the failure to treat a person with dignity that God gave them by making that person in God's image. Additionally, he says, if we're all just a cosmic accident, there's no way to say that date rape is absolutely wrong. Lastly, the video raises a question that I want to address. How is attaching a foreboding dope beat and rug cleaning ASMR to a discussion of date rape treating people with dignity and respect? Backpack Guy and relativism first. He says he would believe date rape to be wrong because of a relativist collection of beliefs he holds. Now, relativism really usually comes in one of two forms. A cultural or descriptive sort of relativism, where someone's saying, hey, different cultures have different moral codes. This seems true to most people. You can go to a whole bunch of different places, a whole bunch of different societies, either now or throughout history, and realize that different people believe different things. I am absolutely certain there are not only communities in the world now, but historically who would believe that date rape was wrong, but there are also those who would say, yeah, date rape not so wrong. Cultural relativism or descriptive relativism just says different people believe different things with regard to morality. It seems like our backpack dude is committed to a slightly different sort of relativism, a moral or ethical relativism. The belief that hey, different cultures have different moral codes, and that's all we can go on, and we should follow the rules of whatever relativist code of ethics we find ourselves a part of. Descriptive relativism might be saying, hey, they do things differently in Rome, but the moral relativist is saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, because in Rome, Rome's rules apply, and they are the right thing to do. It's not really a surprise that this discussion might have started with Backpack Guy accusing Cliffe of being arrogant for making moral judgments. It's sort of an earmark of a relativist position. There's something arrogant or ethnocentric about judging from our own point of view. That is an important cautionary note. There are all sorts of historical examples of people judging other people from other cultures based on arbitrary, stupid stuff like what they eat or the clothes they wear, and deeming them savages so that they can treat them however the hell they want. But that's about all that relativism has going for it. There are countless practical problems with moral relativism. How do we determine what a particular community believes? What is the dominant moral position? In the United States, What's our position regarding abortion? What about same-sex marriage? What about gender identity? The list goes on and on and on of moral issues that we don't all agree on, even if we consider ourselves to be part of the same culture. Additionally, have we made moral progress? How does relativism account for that? Relativism can't say we're better off now with no slavery or segregation or an increase in civil rights because we're not better, we're just different. Does anyone really want to say slavery was the right thing to do 250 years ago? I would hope not. What makes sense to say is a huge number of people believed that slavery was acceptable, and maybe I can understand why they believed it, but of course it was profoundly morally wrong. How do we solve disagreements between cultures? We can't judge other cultures at all? What if they're doing totally aberrant things? Is genocide okay? If it's 1942 and I'm in Berlin, am I compelled to say the final solution, good idea, morally justified, because that's the community of which I'm a part? All of these are profound problems for moral relativism. And we haven't even gotten to the biggest problems. What is the evidence that moral relativism is true? The fact that different cultures believe different things? The fact that people disagree about something. Therefore, there is no right answer, and you should follow the rules of the community of people wherein you find yourself living. That argument is invalid. Just because people disagree about something doesn't mean there is no right answer. It just means at least one of those groups of people is wrong. If I'm born into a group of people who believe in the flat earth, does that mean that the earth is flat? If I'm born into a group of people who believe if you go outside without your coat, the cold will cause you to get sick, does that mean I have to believe that and they're right? If I'm born into a community of bros who think they eat enough creatine, hammer enough protein, they're turning fat into muscle, does that make it true? Sure, there are lots of different communities who believe lots of different things morally, and finding the right answer can be difficult. But the fact that people disagree about it does not mean that there is no right answer. And it sure as hell doesn't mean that each and every one of those relativist codes is right for the people who are in those communities. If so, it amounts to an appeal to authority. Whatever the community says is right because the community said so. And we don't want to use a fallacy as support for any of our beliefs, let alone our moral beliefs. Additionally, if moral relativism is what Backpack Guy is talking about, then he's saying the statement, date rape is wrong, is true if it's written on a piece of paper and it's tucked in his backpack. But what happens when I take it out of his backpack and go to any number of communities where people would say, oh yeah, date rape, not really wrong. What happened to the truth value of that statement? It changed? What sort of conception of truth must the moral relativist be working with if they're going to be saying, the statement on this piece of paper is true, unless you take it over there, then it becomes false? Relativism of the sort we just described, not an option. Irrational, unjustified, totally unsupported. So next we have the woman who mentions free will. We'll hold on to that one for a minute and get to Cliffe's account first. Cliffe's account is that human beings are worthy of dignity because they were made in God's image. Now, this view boils down to one of a couple faith-based ethical theories. It can either be like a straightforward divine command theory, which would be, hey, what's right is right because God said so, what's wrong is wrong because God said so. God saying it makes it true or false. Or Cliffe's committed to some version of a natural law sort of theory. The way God made the world and the purpose that he had for it illustrates divine laws or rules that we ought to follow because they are divine and they're a reflection of his divine will. Either way, we have a ton of problems, some of which will seem very similar to the problems for the relativist. Cliffe was very quick to question the relativist. Why is that wrong? Well, we can question Cliffe. Why your God? There have been countless other gods in the history of the world with people who have just as much faith in those gods as you do. Why is your conception of God the right one? And if we say your conception of God loosely is the right one, a theistic conception of God consistent with the majority of interpretations of Abrahamic religions, how do we know your interpretation's the right one? This all could be like the beginning of a really hokey, corny joke. Let's say a rabbi, a cleric, a minister, a priest, a pastor all walk into a bar. Are the Protestant and the Baptist and the Catholic all going to order the same thing? Nope. And they're going to have moral reasons for doing so. Even if they all rely on more or less the same religious texts, there's different interpretations. How do we know yours is the right one? I guarantee you right now, someone can Googleify and find Christians who believe themselves to be good Christians, who have just as much faith in their version of Christianity as you have in yours, who are going to say that if a husband and wife are out on a date and he rapes her, it's not rape, because marital rape isn't a thing. They will believe that a wife is the property of her husband and marital rape doesn't exist. So, we are back to our problem that we have with relativism. How do we determine and distinguish which faith-based view is the right one? How do I know what God said? What principled justification are you going to give for your interpretation that rules out every other interpretation there is? Furthermore, we have the same appeal to authority. You're telling me that rape is wrong just because God said it? What if he said date rape is okay? What if he changes his mind? What if he says, hey, everybody, date rape as much as you can? Divine command and natural law theory that ultimately reduces to divine command fail in pretty much the same ways that relativism does. So why did I save free will to the end? Because free will is the beginning of an answer that an atheist can give to the simple question, why is date rape wrong? Whether God exists or not, one could argue, hey, compromising free will compromises one of the things that makes people capable of valuing anything at all. It would be a sort of neo-Kantian, deontological sort of argument. Look, we value our freedom because our freedom to act on our desires allows us to fulfill those desires and create value in rationally justifiable, awesome sorts of ways. Pretty good argument. Far better than divine command or relativism. Or we could say, hey, free will is valuable because our free will allows us to make decisions that make us happy. And we could go the route of a consequentialist or utilitarian account where we say happiness is ultimately what matters. And the greatest happiness for everyone isn't advanced by date rape. It causes suffering. So date rape is wrong. Or I could go a motivist or sentimentalist response, certain sorts of ideal observer versions of those accounts. Hey, look, we can empathize with people and we can know that raping someone causes them suffering. Ignoring our empathic response to them is horseshit. Those are just a handful of countless permutations of ethical theories that don't have a damn thing to do with God and answer the question as to why date rape is wrong, even if human beings are just cosmic accidents. All of which are better in every single philosophical respect than divine command or relativism. And that brings us to our last question. What are you doing attaching that dramatic music and the rug cleaning ASMR to a discussion of date rape? I can only imagine a couple of different motivations. You want people to click on it again and again and again so you make more money. Or the psychological satisfaction of the dramatic music and the butterflies being revealed are going to help convince people of the position that you're selling. Regardless of your answer, I can't imagine one that's treating people with the sort of dignity that Cliffe Knechtle demands people be treated with. So, at the end of the day, can an atheist answer the question, why is date rape wrong? Absolutely. And they can do it in far more rationally justifiable, philosophically interesting ways than Backpack Guy's relativism or Cliffe's divine command or natural law theory. If you're interested in hearing me address some anticipated objections, clear some things up, rant and rave about stuff that came up that didn't fit into the first half of the video perfectly, then stick around. If not, I hope I gave you something to think about, and thanks for the time. The ranting, it begins right about now. All right, I'm excited and a little anxious and interested to see how this video is received because I ended up incapable of, or not having any interest in, hiding my disdain for these sorts of college argument, prove me wrong, set up 100 cameras in the quad and record videos of YouTube personalities fighting with students all day long, and then going back and cherry picking those snippets that make the person look the best and the students look the worst. And there are two reasons I just think they're really lame. They're kind of just bullying and exploiting kids. Because college kids are kids, and they're idiots, and they're supposed to be overzealous, and they're supposed to have a little bit too much bravado regarding the new ideas that they just encountered, and they're supposed to wield those ideas like a hammer, and all of a sudden everything's a nail, and they're supposed to be foolish. And then the adults in the room, their instructors, teachers, professors, mentors, rein them in. And they might even kick their ass a little bit in class or in a seminar, and they may need to take them down a peg or two. But that ought to all be done in the spirit of helping them grow and learn and become smarter. These sorts of videos are more like the intellectual version of Girls Gone Wild. How's that for a dated reference? Like, Backpack Kid is no different than the girl who's half drunk stumbling out of a bar during spring break, and someone throws a waiver in her face and says, "Here, we'll give you a trucker hat if you show us your boobs." And then her boobs are on a video for the rest of time. Backpack Kid was stumbling out of his cultural anthropology class or his sociology class where he read some paper from 1937 that at the time was a groundbreaking critique of ethnocentrism. And it challenged some of what he thought, and he's way too confident in this new idea he has and his unsophisticated argument for it. And rather than running into an adult in the room who wants to help him become smarter or grow as a person, he runs into Cliffe Knechtle, who was invited by the Campus Crusade or Students on the Hill, or whatever the student Christian group was called. And instead of having his boobs recorded for posterity, Backpack Kid has his kind of embarrassingly bad relativist argument digitized for all time. And that's just shitty. And before anybody gets on their high horse and wants to say, "Oh, at 19, he should know better," horseshit. I know my demographics. You're all like 35 to 90 years old. If you're telling me you didn't believe a ton of absolutely foolish, idiotic, moronic stuff that you thought was really smart when you were 19, I can only think of one of two options. If you haven't grown since then, prime time to have life experiences and a ton of neural development, then you're just an idiot and you suck. Or if you are so profoundly insecure that you can't reflect and think back to, "Oh my God, I can't believe that time I argued so-and-so with such and such," or that I believed X, Y, or Z, then you should seek help. You'll be happier and healthier after some professional intervention. Having some foolish beliefs and making mistakes is part of growing up, and it's something that college is made for in a lot of ways. The second reason is I think a lot of these videos people end up using and saying like, "Oh, look what they're teaching at secular colleges. Look at the idiocy they're teaching." I could do the exact same thing Cliffe Knechtle does at any private Christian, Catholic, faith-based college or university in the country. No problem. But not for the sake of someone else's entertainment or for someone else to make a buck or for someone else to convert people, for their own benefit to help them become smarter. As for the content of the video, there are quite a few things I think people could find some objections to, but I had to make some choices to keep it short, and really what I wanted to do is introduce people to some of the criticisms of these really popular positions. It's why I threw that book in the background. I quit using textbooks like 15 years ago, but I used that one and I think I remember it being pretty good with regard to offering thoughtful consideration and critique of kind of popular, quasi-philosophical ethical theories that just don't work very well. I just now thought I probably should have revisited it and taken a peek to make sure it doesn't suck, but I really remember it being solid. So you can get something like that for like $5 online. You should do it. That one is the Elements of Moral Philosophy by James and Stuart Rachel's 5th edition. As for the substantive stuff, I think I really simplified the relativist position. I think it's likely that Backpack Kid's actual position is or would end up being some form of nihilism or subjectivism, and those views won't have the same problems the relativist has. They'll have some other problems to tackle, but I wanted to stick with that argument because it was the one being considered. I think it's interesting that the beginnings of the most philosophically robust answer to these questions came from the woman who shouted something out about taking away or compromising free will, but no one pursued it. She just kind of got bulldozed by two white dudes, which is not a surprise if you've spent any time in a college classroom or on a college campus, and I wanted to at least point it out. And no, saying it took someone's free will isn't in and of itself a complete argument, but free will or a psychological commitment to a belief that we have free will, for all of you determinists out there, serves as a far better foundation for an argument regarding ethics and morality than Backpack Guy's relativism or Cliffe's theological voluntarism, divine command. As for the divine command stuff, I think the only thing I'll clarify, I imagine someone will nitpick because in my joke I said a Catholic, a Protestant, and a Baptist, and they'll be like, well, Baptists are types of Protestants, and not all Protestants are against drinking. I know. The point is that one could be even of the same particular flavor of Christianity and have disagreements about the moral rightness or wrongness of an issue, and both have the same sorts of evidence and reason for their beliefs. It's really hard to have a principled reason of saying, hey, my interpretation's better than yours. That was the whole point of the joke. I could have been more clear by saying, even if it's two Protestants, one of whom is a Mennonite and one of whom is a Baptist. But I think the logical way to the argument's the same. I hope I wasn't too unfair to Cliffe's position because I don't know completely his moral position. There are a handful of different ways to flesh out a theological voluntarism. Theological voluntarism just is divine command, but it sounds fancier, and if you want to sound like you're doing something smarter than God said so. Faith-based ethical theories in general are just a really, really tough row to hoe. It's really hard to get them off the ground because we have other commitments, other things we can prove and demonstrate to serve as a foundation for ethical claims and commitments that don't rest on something that's impossibly hard to prove. And it's impossibly hard to prove the existence of God, the character of God, and that your interpretation of who that God is and what he says is the right one. I was also tempted to dive into some Euthyphro's Dilemma flavored critiques of divine command, but that seemed like it was going to take it far afield, and it likely needs its own video. Lastly, I feel a little bit bad about beating up on Christian content for their ASMR and moody background music, but only if they're someone poor and destitute and found out a way they could game the system by chopping up Cliffe Knechtle videos and making a buck off of it, and they really need the money. So if that's you, Christian content person, I'm with you. Go to it. Chop up my videos if you can. Nobody watches my videos, but if they did, chop mine up and make a buck off of them. But you think about it, it's a pretty good racket because folks who are really earnest and committed, and I think Cliffe Knechtle is earnest and committed, he's not going to stop them. He's not going to make a copyright claim or anything because he wants as many people getting his message as possible because he wants to save as many souls as possible. So the people who found this niche of Christian content mining and regurgitation, good on you. But if you're doing it for some sort of moral principle or some sort of divine purpose, it's kind of shitty to do it in a way where you're counting on the bells and whistles to convince people, not the content of the message. I think that's about it for ranting, raving. I really appreciate you sticking around. I hope I gave you something to think about. Thanks for the extra time you gave me. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Let me know what I did wrong. Let me know what you agree with or disagree with. Hopefully I got you to think a little bit differently or consider something in a different way. And hopefully you're a little smarter because of it. Thanks so much for the time.